Hi there, Kristen here. And I'm the founder of Roots of Radiance Reiki, and today I want to talk to you about moving with the cycles and how embracing cycles can really help to bring more pleasure into our life, bring more peace into our life, and bring more just self-acceptance into our world. Again, my name is Kristen. If you haven't, please subscribe to my channel. Click that little bell button as well, and you'll get notifications on all the times I put up new videos. Okay, so the cycles. So we just moved through the spring equinox, which for anyone who is familiar is the day of the year when we have equal day and equal night. This happens twice a year, where we have equal day and equal night. Every other day, minus those 2 days, there is a change, right? And so I think that when we sink in, as we sink in to the cycles, what it allows is it gives us space to honor the ever-changing nature of life. Sometimes in the world as we've created it, in this linear world as we've created it, there's this perception that we're always constantly moving forward on the line, on the path. And so in those moments in our life where we inevitably cycle backwards, right, in a circle, we might feel in this linear way of thinking that we are falling behind, that we are doing something wrong, that we have somehow done something wrong. And so it can leave us in this constant state of feeling not enough, not good enough. And that can be just a really hard place to be living in, right? Anytime that we enter into that kind of doubt land, into that kind of like downer on ourself space, it just is hard. It's hard to be in that space. And honestly, we deserve to move out of that space and into a different space. And so again, in this linear land, when we're expected to constantly move forward along the line, if we cycle backwards as we do in a circle, we can start to judge ourselves. And so when we start to hold a circle, so I'm just going to hold a circle here, we can start to actually see our progress, less of like, oh, I fell behind, and more, I'm moving forward on my path. I think it's really important when we're thinking about just our lives and our world is to come back into relationship with the circle. So I'd like to do a little Wheel of the Year 101. So most of us are taught to think of the way that time passes. Our visual representation of how we think of the year is a calendar, right? Lots of little boxes and lots of little squares. I want to take us out of box land and bring us back into cyclical land. So let's think of the year not as a bunch of little boxes that live inside of a planner. Let's think of the year as a wheel, right? This is how ancient ones used to conceptualize time. And much of this conceptualization was due from observation, right? Our ancient ones would watch the skies and would watch the days and would observe patterns, would observe cycles. So I'm going to start talking about the Wheel of the Year by talking about the spring equinox. We just had the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. It would be the fall equinox in the southern hemisphere because we're swapped. So from now on, I'm just going to talk about the northern hemisphere because that's where I am. Cool. So we just had the spring equinox in March 20th-ish is when the spring equinox is. So that is a day of the year when there is equal balance, right? The day and the night are equally balanced. That's really the specialness of that day, right? And so if we are going to take that day, I'm going to use my little thing here as a circle. So we have the Wheel of the Year here. So we start at the spring equinox, equal day, equal night, and we move forward. So every day from now until the summer solstice, we're going to have longer and longer days. We're going to have more daylight than nighttime from the spring equinox point until the summer solstice. Summer solstice is around June 20th, and that's the day when there is the most light. There is more daytime than there is nighttime in the northern hemisphere. And from that moment on, it's going to become darker every single day. Darker, 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 darker days. And honestly, until we get to that fall equinox point, right? Another day when there's equal balance between day and night, that fall equinox point is going to be where it switches again. And now night is going to take over, right? So we're going to have darker, more darkness, more darkness, more darkness, right? The nights are growing longer, the nights are growing longer until we get to the winter solstice. The winter solstice is about December 20th, and that is going to be when there is the most night. It's the day that has the longest night and the shortest day. And I didn't say the fall equinox is around September 20th. Cool. So we reach that winter solstice point. That's around December 20th. We have super dark, dark night. But after that day, all the days are getting longer, 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 longer days until we get to that equinox point again in the spring when the days and the nights are equally balanced. So that's essentially how we view the wheel of the year. There's a lot of other there's a lot of other things involved in it, but at the very basics, the wheel of the year is a witnessing of daylight, right? It's an observation of the way that daylight is constantly changing, right? The way that every single day we have slightly different sunrise time, slightly different sunset time. There is this ever-changing aspect to the amount of daylight that we have and the amount of darkness that we have. So if we're to take just that very bare bones understanding of the wheel of the year, right? Just this holding of the fact that every single day that we exist on this planet is slightly different than the day before in terms of how much light we have and how much dark we have, right? And yet we're always cycling. We're always going to come back to that summer solstice point in mid-June when there's so much daylight, and then it starts to darken again, darken again, darken again. And so when we are able to hold this rhythmic cycle in the cosmos, right? Like this is just the way the sun is impacting us on this planet. When we can hold that ever-changingness, we can hold ourselves with a little bit more grace, right? Because we can understand that it's unrealistic for us to expect ourselves to be this like bright light every single day of the year. It's unrealistic to expect ourselves to be able to perform in the same way every single day of the year. It's unrealistic to expect ourselves to be able to always be bright all the time, right? Sometimes we need to have a little bit more darkness. Sometimes we need to have a little bit more light. And so when we move away from calendar being a bunch of boxes that represent day, and we move towards calendar being this circle that we move through every single year, we can begin to really root in to the resiliency that these cycles have to offer us. And we can really start to give ourselves more permission to be authentic, natural, true to ourselves, right? I don't think I'm alone when I say that this society often makes me feel like I am not good enough, like I have not done enough, and like I will never be enough. And it's not me that thinks that. It's false programming that this society has implanted in me, right? I think it's really important for us to begin to really differentiate like what is ours and what has been implanted or programmed into us from a society that wants to use us as cogs in a system to make money. I think it's really, really important for us to begin to really identify the falsities, right? One falsity is this idea that time is a linear path. That's what I was taught, right? That we're moving along this timeline. That's the language they like to use. But I don't think of myself as moving along a timeline. I think of myself as cycling through cycles, through seasons, spiraling, right? I don't see myself moving like this. I see myself moving like this, right? Where like I make forward progress and yet, it's a little bit, you know? So I think it's really, it's spacious. The circle gives us space to be more full, authentic versions of ourselves. And I think that that's something that all of us are craving. So again, this is a super, super simple kind of basics of the wheel of the year. I have a free downloadable if you want it. There's a link in the show notes below. Yeah, if you want the free downloadable wheel of the year so that you can begin to just watching yourself, tracking your cycles, watching how you flow with the year. I think it's really poignant when we are able to give ourselves space to observe how we move through the cycles. When we can anchor into the cycles and we can observe how we move through the cycles, we can begin to understand how we work. And when we understand how we work, we can begin to accept ourselves more and stop being so critical of the ways that we think that we should be, right? We can start to actually accept ourselves for who we really are. And I think that that is something we all really want. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. Please comment below if you have any questions, or if you'd like me to get deeper in any parts of this Wheel of the Year. That was a really like bare bones, basic like overview. Bye now.